In the silent reaches of the cosmos, something has started to shine, not in the star's radiant fire, nor the reflected shimmer of sunlight on ice, but an intentional pulse of light. It was first noticed by astronomers while observing 3 Atlas, an interstellar visitor speeding through the solar system. It was intended to be only another comet, just another rock drifting among the stars. But recently, the James Webb Space Telescope detected hints at the opposite. A new type of light, one that doesn't reflect, one that does not disperse, one that stands out as if made, as if designed. At first, it was ignored, just one more overblown anomaly, maybe a camera glitch, possibly dust. However, the light persisted. Then it expanded. And now scientists don't know what to say because the brightness patterns don't follow natural rules. Also, when artificial light is the only explanation, if left in place, the results are terrifying. So exactly what did James Webb find? Why is the scientific community in a quiet state of panic? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear could alter every thought we had. We were aware of who is watching us from the shadows. As soon as 3 Atlas was discovered, astronomers sensed something was off. Yes, it moved like a comet. Yes, it appeared to follow a classic interstellar trajectory, but its brightness, an incredible level of brightness, refused to give an explanation. At a distance of over 400 million kilometers from the planet, this object shone with a magnitude of 16.4 by astronomical standards. Not a blazing inferno, but still far too bright for an object of that size. Comets that are similar in size and distance are typically invisible, or at best described as tiny smudges. However, 3 Atlas shone with an obstinate, almost ominous intensity. Astronomers rushed to find answers. It could have been larger than anticipated. Maybe it was kicking off vast clouds of dust that reflected light toward Earth. Maybe. Perhaps it was only an extreme case. But one by one, these theories began to collapse. The James Webb Space Telescope looked further into the spectrum, which analyzes light with instruments far more precise than any telescope in history. What it saw wasn't reflected light at all. It was light emitted, a source of luminosity radiating outward from 3 Atlas's nucleus, as if the object itself were generating its own glow. The notion that a comet could generate its own light contradicts the fundamental rules of how objects behave in space. Natural bodies do not generate significant amounts of visible light unless they are stars or heated to thousands of degrees. However, the brightness profile of 3 Atlas failed to match any existing comet model. In fact, the light fell off at a slope of 4, far steeper than anything that reflects sunlight. This sharp decline points to a central light source surrounded by a spreading halo that looked like a spotlight surrounded by mist. But there was more. No results from the spectrum analysis showed traces of the usual comet gases. No water, no cyanide, no carbon monoxide. Nothing that could account for vapor, dust, or volatile outgassing jets. That left one radical possibility. The object did not reflect light. It was creating it. The energy required for this glow was 10 gigawatts, equivalent to the output of 10 nuclear plants combined. An absurd, almost unimaginable number. Unless this thing was something entirely different, something engineered. Some suggested it could be a shard of nuclear material from a supernova core, still glowing with radioactive heat. However, even this could not match the intensity or the observed spectral signature. The scientific community was forced to confront an explanation they were unprepared for: an artificial origin. Enter Avi Loeb, the Harvard astrophysicist who famously suggested that the first known interstellar object, Oumuamua, was an alien probe. He was ridiculed by many in the field, but he didn't back down. And now with 3 Atlas, Loeb is back, and he's not alone. Teaming up with physicist Eric Kito, Loeb analyzed the object's light curve and published a model that closely matches the observed data, superior to standard explanations. In their model, a primary energy source, artificial in nature, illuminates the surrounding dust, creating a light profile unlike any natural body. They even calculated the required temperature of at least 1000 degrees Kelvin from the emitter. At that temperature, a light source just 100 meters wide could produce everything we're seeing. A small, compact, powerfully radiant emitter, suspiciously similar in size to some manned spacecraft. So what is this thing? A signal? A power core? Or something we haven't seen before? The repercussions of this model are astonishing because if 3 Atlas is not a natural object, then we are no longer alone in the cold void of space between stars. We are being visited. The strangeness doesn't end with the light. 3 Atlas is acting differently than a mindless wanderer. Its route through the solar system is unnervingly precise. It's moving along the plane of the ecliptic, the same plane where Earth and most planets, including Mars and Jupiter, orbit. Its trajectory is bringing it within the distance of each of these planets. Not randomly, not barely, but within a range so close that even primitive interplanetary missiles could be sent to it from all those planets. Even more chilling at its closest approach, Earth will be on the other side of the sun, so to speak, blind to direct observation, almost like a cloaked passage designed to evade detection at the most critical moment. Coincidence? Or is it just a flyby hiding something more sinister? Some theorists have begun to suggest that the surrounding dust cloud might not be natural. It might be a swarm of microscopic machines, nanotechnology gathering matter from other stars to use as fuel. Similar mysteries have occurred before. Astronomers once observed a star lose its dust ring overnight, an event they still can't explain. Could this be the same thing? Is 3 Atlas harvesting? Weeks after the initial anomaly was registered, the James Webb team expanded their surveillance into the dark microwave, infrared, and radio band spectrums. Curiously, things became even more unsettling. Hidden behind the artificial glow, there was a signal, weak, nearly buried in cosmic noise. It pulsed in a rhythmic but not random way, a sequence that repeated every 7.2 hours. Too long for a natural rotational delay, too short to be interference. What then? What most astonished researchers was its frequency range, precisely within a narrow band that Earth's military and communication satellites reserve for secure communications. How likely is that? The odds of overlap occurring at random are astronomical. This raised an even more chilling theory. What if the light is more than just a byproduct of energy or propulsion? What if it is a language of communication? Photons encoded by frequency and pulse shifts. Worse still, what if it's not a message to us, but a message conveyed through us, piggybacking on Earth's own communication systems? Some consider this a tactic used in espionage. Incorporate your message into another system and no one notices until it's too late. If 3 Atlas is doing this, then the image we have been watching might just be a way for us to blindly help transmit it. Around the same time, an independent research group led by astrophysicist Laura Jen from the University of Tokyo reported something equally alarming. While analyzing time-lapse frames from Webb's ultra-deep field captures, her team noticed that 3 Atlas's light intensity was not just varying. It showed binary pulsations, light, shade, dark, but not flickering like a dying star or a spinning object, but in precise intervals that remained constant, always repeating. Over time, a pattern emerged. One delay every 16 pulses, then 32 pulses, then another delay. What they had was not noise. It was structure. It mirrored known binary codes in digital language frameworks. Computer scientists began experimenting, plugging the sequences into known data decoders, AI interpretation models, and even running them through software for old languages. The result was a partial match. The sequence possessed structural resemblances to early Earth-based computing protocols from the 1970s. This shouldn't be possible, but it gave rise to the terrifying notion that the intelligence behind 3 Atlas might be adjusting its signals to coincide with our primitive digital language, as if it has been watching us, learning from our broadcasts, preparing a message we have the ability to comprehend. It is not the first time that light. The darkness has sparked alarm. In 1979, the Vela satellites discovered a baffling double flash over the Indian Ocean. For decades, the event was buried under theories of secret nuclear tests, meteor impacts, and gamma-ray bursts. But now, revisiting the signal in the context of the three-eyed map, researchers observed striking resemblances. The rhythm width, the pattern of decay, and the signal's symmetry. A number of data scientists comparing the Vela readings to the Webb observations noted overlap in modulation and strength curves. As insane as it sounds, this opened a frightening hypothesis. What if three-eyed Atlas existed previously? Imagine the 1979 double flash wasn't a test at all, but a visit, or even worse, an early activation or probe, a scout. And what if what we're seeing now is simply the return of something we weren't supposed to remember? Governments, after all, buried the Vela flash for more than a decade. What are they burying now? Finally, the temperature sensors on the Webb caught something out of the ordinary. Not only heat, but no heat. a path of extremely cold vacuum following three-eyed Atlas, darker than space as a whole. This cold wake is in opposition to everything we know about thermodynamics. Even space-based objects maintain the sun's remaining heat radiation. However, the three-eyed Atlas, letting go of something that uses energy, causes the fabric all around it to drain like a space-spanning black curtain. Astrophysicists call this a negative energy field, a hypothetical concept utilized in time and warp drive theory, physics of dilation. The presence of such a field would suggest that three-eyed Atlas is not traversing space. It's bending space around it. That would explain its impossible acceleration patterns, its absence of noise and friction during its journey. It would also explain why it can shine while remaining functionally cold. The heat does not produce light. It comes from manipulated energy. And if it's bending space to travel, we are unsure where it originated from or where it is headed. Or even worse, if it already exists. The most recent long-range series from James Webb exposures revealed a further confusing fact. Thin, filament-like structures trailing behind three-eyed Atlas, similar to the condensation trails of high-altitude aircraft. But in the vacuum of space, contrails can't exist. There is no environment to create vapor, no change in temperature to freeze matter into particulates. Yet they were there, high-energy lines that trailed behind particles, symmetrical and layered like a lattice. They were dubbed ghost trails by scientists. These ghost trails were unlike any previous phenomenon involving cosmic dust recorded. They weren't a mess. They formed angles that met and overlapped arcs, almost like a grid for navigation, as though the object was mapping space at the moment. Some physicists proposed that the trails were quantum distortions, echoes from manipulated gravity fields. Others theorized they were signs of an exotic system of propulsion, possibly ionic or even beyond that, something akin to field inversion. But perhaps the most chilling idea was the radical one. The trails were not leftovers. They were intentional, like breadcrumbs, a signal, or even worse, a way for another thing to follow. The tipping point came next, pushing everything into true paranoia, a gap, an omission in the James Webb data's window logs. The primary telescope functioned for 47 minutes, but sensors stopped sending visual information according to the three-eyed Atlas stream. There was no technical issue, no solar interference, just absence by itself, a void. Three-eyed Atlas was there when the feed came back, with a slightly altered trajectory, only by 0.17 dir, but enough to make NASA and ESA analysts wonder. Cross-referencing with redundant systems, the outage was consistent across multiple instruments. This sparked rumors about the observer effect, a quantum theory stating that watching an event can alter the outcome. Some even attempted to state that the object had reacted to being watched, changed course, hidden as if it knew we were looking. A chilling theory developed. What if three-eyed Atlas isn't merely going through our system? What if it is putting our surveillance capabilities to the test? Later, during what ought to be a standard stellar occultation, when a celestial body moves past a star, astronomers observed something disturbing. As three-eyed Atlas moved across the line of sight to a distant star, the star's light did not gradually dim. Instead, it flickered, not in a fade, but in a planned on-off manner at intervals. The light diminished in precise patterns. 3 pulses, a pause, 5 beats, a pause, 3 more. 3 to 5 to 3 repeatedly. This was not just by chance. It resembled a pattern of signals used in early radio code like Morse. The repercussions were staggering. If the object could block starlight in a logical order, it meant that it could alter its own silhouette, literally changing how it appeared in accordance with who or what was observing. This wasn't just advanced technology. This was theatrical behavior that could be observed, measured, and decoded. But who was it for? As the object grew larger beyond its perihelion, Webb's closest proximity to the sun, it revealed an unsettling change. The warm glow that had once existed golden started to change, bluer, cooler, sharper. It began to radiate not as a fuzzy cloud, but as a beam, focused in contrast to a lighthouse that slices through mist. Its inverted energy profile increased shortwave frequencies more than ever before. The end result, the object was adjusting its emission spectrum. Why then? One theory holds true. Earth's atmosphere is transparent to specific bands of electromagnetic, optical and microwave windows and infrared wavelengths. It's possible the object was tuning itself to become more visible, not only to machines, Humans and sensors, but to systems of surveillance. Or perhaps to respond to something we already sent into the void. Voyager, Pioneer, New.